entrepreneurship, there's never going to be a perfect time.
I didn't really feel a lot of passion for my job. Like, I didn't like that someone would just tell me what to do, more or less.
Especially in your 20s, you really need to not be fearful of taking risks.
Like sometimes I think about, would it have been a better idea to just kind of try to maximize my income at a traditional job rather than trying to make my own business?
I quit my job 9 months ago, and man, it's been a grind. Some days I feel like I'm on the right path, and other days I wonder if I've made a huge mistake. Quitting isn't easy, and I needed some clarity. So I went looking for answers, and I found them. For today's Why Learn Wednesday, I sat down with 4 people who actually did it. They quit their jobs to chase freedom, and they succeeded. In this video, you'll hear how they did it, why they quit, how they prepared, their biggest struggles, what they regret, and whether they do it all over again. These are real people from completely different backgrounds. We have Kevin, ex-Google software engineer with a massive online presence in the tech space. We have BizPath, a former salesman turned real estate entrepreneur and millionaire by 26, also emerging content creator. Then we have Kobatine, former grocery store clerk, now full-time content creator and vintage game reseller with a massive online presence on multiple platforms. And we have Jake, a former software engineer, now founder of a tech company that generates multiple 5 figures per month. Their stories are brutally honest, and what they shared might surprise you. If you've ever thought about quitting your job to go your own way, this video is packed with value. These conversations gave me so much clarity, and I hope they can help you too. If this kind of content helps you out, drop a like and hit subscribe. And if you've quit your job or you're thinking about it, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Let's dive right in. So what was your job before quitting?
I was a software engineer at Google, and specifically I was working on YouTube, and within YouTube, I was working on YouTube podcasts. I worked there for about 4 years. Primarily, I was on 2 different teams. One was in Google Workspace for the first few years, and then the last year, I transferred to be within YouTube. And for me, I really liked it, but I just kind of was itching to go try and do something else, which I'm sure we're going to talk more about.
I was before quitting, I was what's called an ISM, an inside sales manager for that real estate services company. I was there for just under 4 years, and I started off as an appointment setter. So we just converted leads for real estate agents into qualified buyers and sellers. It was kind of what I started with, quickly became top performer, and then I started managing any given amount of reps from 10 to 15 people, and that was in my early 20s. So that really caught off my sales skills, my management / leadership skills, kind of learned the ins and outs of a startup, and it worked really well. It worked perfectly.
The latest job I had, I was a grocery clerk, and I was there for practically 9 months.
I actually was contemplating going to college or kind of getting a software engineering job. And I kind of made the decision that I would apply for a bunch of jobs, and if I got one, I would take it, and if I didn't, then I'd go to college. So I got a job as a software engineer at a small tech startup, and I was there for, about 3 years. Didn't pay great at the start, but I kind of started going up in salary as it went on. When I was applying to jobs, I actually did really bad in the interviews, but thankfully what I did have was I had a good portfolio.
So you already know my story. I was a software engineer before I quit, but I think these stories are really going to show that anyone from any background, whether they went to college or didn't go to college, blue collar, white collar jobs, people can succeed and go their own way with enough hard work. And I think the stories today are going to show that. What was the moment you decided to quit, and what was your why behind it?
But there was a lot of stuff that I kind of thought about. And so I think the first thing was just that it was always the plan. I always talked about the fact that I wanted to go and work for myself at some point. So even before joining Google, I always knew that my end goal truly was that I wanted to go and work for myself and go do the things that I was really interested in. The second thing is I didn't really feel a lot of passion. And I think this is pretty typical in a lot of 9-to-5s, and it's definitely something that I felt. And it's funny because I think before getting into Google, it's easy to think that you're going to get into this dream job, which it was for me, and then everything is going to be, amazing and everything is going to work out. But that was really not what I ended up finding. I didn't really feel a lot of passion for my job. I didn't really feel like I was being pushed that hard or that I had to work that hard to, do my job. And that was something that I didn't love either. And then I also had my dad pass away almost 3 years ago. And so to me, that was a really big motivator that I wanted to, go and do the stuff that I wanted to do and sort of have urgency with the time that I have left to spend it doing the stuff that I really, really care about. And so losing my dad sort of violently put that stuff into perspective. And even though it's been almost 3 years, it just took me a little bit of time to figure out how to best get up and leave. And then really, I think probably the larger point and one of the biggest things that I realized too was just that what I was doing and what I wanted to do would never intersect. And I always describe this as like two parallel lines running next to each other. So even though I was on this, I guess, dream job or opportunity, it really wasn't what I wanted at the end of the day. And so I knew that even if I stayed at Google for like 40 years or something, I would never actually get to where I wanted to go. And so those are some of the reasons why I decided to leave. I knew that if I didn't make a change, I would actually never end up in the place that I wanted to be.
Multiple factors, but the main one was finally like feeling confident enough in the skills that I built through that job, which I think is so important. And I love that you're making this video because I think a lot of people think a job is bad and 9 to 5 should be cursed, like all this kind of stuff. And I just don't think that's the case. Maybe we'll get into that in a little bit later. But to finally like quote unquote make it on my own was the push for me. And if I'm being honest, a little bit more of a personal reason, my second boss was just a total douche and said some things that just like really pushed me over the edge. It really finalized my decision, but it was mainly like, I've got this. Like I know how to sell, I know how to articulate my words well, and it just worked out really well from that point.
Honestly, like I've quit a lot of jobs, and this last job was probably one of the most important lessons, and that was no matter how easy or comfortable a job is for me, the traditional 9 to 5 is just not for me. Like this was such an easy job, and I was literally wasting 6 to like 8 hours a day accumulating money, which is great, right? But I still had 10,000 subscribers counting on me to make the best of the best videos in my niche, right? So for me, that was just such an amplified motivation to really just take the leap of faith into quitting this job. So I was on the bus going to this place to get some games, and I was just thinking, like, honestly, being here is just such a waste of time. I've accumulated enough money where I can just quit and fulfill this, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, so when I initially got that job, obviously I was like super happy. I mean, I was making like a ton of money. I was making, uh, more than my sister, and she had a college degree. But at first, I felt, this is a ton of money. Like this is awesome. But it was kind of a combination of wanting to make more money and wanting to have more freedom. Um, and like ultimately, while I could have been making more money at that job, especially considering software engineers can make, hundreds of thousands, especially if you work in FANG. My boss was really chill. I had no problems with my coworkers. I could work from home sometimes. It was flexible. Ultimately, like my job was good and I still didn't like it. It had all the positive qualities of a good job, and I still just like wasn't happy kind of going into the office every day and building someone else's dream. I wasn't like working, I wasn't building my own dream. I wasn't like working towards something. I was just going into work every day and like trading my time for money. And I didn't really like that. Obviously I liked the money, but I wanted to like do something bigger or like build something that was like my own. And I figured if I didn't like this job that was kind of had all the positive aspects of a job, like it wouldn't get better than this, because I didn't have like daily stand-ups or I didn't have deadlines. Like my boss was kind of just like, when you're done, when you get it done, give it to me. So it had like all these positive aspects, and it still, I didn't like it. So I figured I probably wasn't going to like any type of job. And eventually after 3 years of working there, I kind of decided, yeah, I got to just do something different. Well, otherwise I'm just not going to be happy.
So I can relate to a lot of these answers. Lack of passion comes up, or maybe even life events forcing you to view life as temporary, kind of like Kevin mentioned. I know for me, when all my grandparents finally passed away, it forced me to view life as a temporary thing, and that I should be doing what I want to be doing. So everybody has a different reason for quitting that I found fascinating. What did you do to prepare to quit your job?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's maybe like the most important thing that you should think about before you decide to leave your job, because the last thing that you want to do is just decide to wake up on a Monday morning and decide, I don't want to be doing this anymore. So this is something that I thought about for a long time. And it actually ties into, I guess, like the fifth reason that I sort of forgot to mention that helped me decide to take the leap. And that was that, thankfully, and I don't want this to sound like in a braggy or conceited way, but like finances just weren't really a problem for me anymore. And so earlier in my career, I was able to, I think like you, put money aside, live frugally, invest my money. And that helps, tee me up for this opportunity to leave my job. And so every single year that went by, it became harder and harder to justify to myself that staying was a good idea. I definitely had to think, though, okay, how much runway do I have to try this thing on my own? What happens if it doesn't work out? That was another thing that I really thought about. And to me, it was always a two-way door. Like if I go through this door and decide to quit my job, going back and getting a 9 to 5 job I feel pretty confident that I can do. It might not be my favorite job I've ever had. It might not pay me the most amount of money I've ever made. But if I had to go find another 9 to 5 software engineering job, I feel pretty confident that A, I could do it, and B, it would be able to pay my bills. So understanding, I think, mentally that this is a thing that's reversible, in that if things fail, I'm falling into a safety net that's not like 100 feet below me, but it's 10 feet below me. And then I think the other thing that I recommend that people do is try to build the thing that you're going to go do on the side, or that you want to quit for, to the best of your ability. Try to do that while you have your 9 to 5 job. And eventually, I think what you'll start to see, hopefully, is that the opportunity cost of staying at your job might actually be costing you more than if you left your job. And so that was sort of what I started seeing too, where I had all these opportunities and things that I wanted to be able to do, but sort of my 9 to 5 job was actually getting in the way. Definitely have a plan, come up with a financial plan for how much you're going to be able to make every month, how much you're going to be able to save, and that will sort of tell you your runway. And then mentally, I think you have to understand that when you do quit your job, things are going to look pretty different, and you're going to have to decide what to prioritize. Like maybe it's not going out to dinners anymore, or traveling, or whatever the things were. It's probably going to be way more of like, how do I put my money into my business and make sure I can pay my rent every month?
This is a good one, and this is what I think is the most important question. There was not much preparation mentally, I would say, but also financially. I mean, I couldn't really do much. However, I could go after my old clients that were in my network, that were in my old book of business, if you will, and say like, hey, I'm thinking of launching this thing on my own, kind of doing literally the exact same thing on a freelance basis. So you'd be working with me one-to-one. What are your thoughts on that? And this was just through mobile, just through texting. And I got like a 9 out of 10, yes ratio. And I was like, damn, there is something here. Like there is 100% something to go here. But I was kind of scared. I was kind of fearful of what would happen in that case. So I kept it pretty neutral. I kept it pretty even. And my job, I like, did it prepare me for what was next? Yes, but also no at the same time. Like entrepreneurship, there's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be that just one moment where you should go all in. It's all a mist. I always like to use that example. It's all a haze. You're kind of just blindfolded, walking straight. And as long as you don't trip over anything crazy, you will make it. But it's like actually taking that plunge that a lot of people struggle with. So
When I came back home from work every day, I would just grind 4 to 5 hours of video editing. No matter how tired I was, I forced myself, self-discipline myself to still edit. What's more important to me, which was my YouTube channel, and still is, of course. This job was so comfortable, and I saw all kinds of people working and customers in a grocery store. Like I was just like, wow, some people are just so comfortable being average, and that is 1,000% okay. But for me, I knew since a very long time ago that this was not meant for me. Like, not that job, but just to have a regular lifestyle, punch in, punch out, stack a few things, and do it all over the next day. The more I spoke to people at that job, the more I really understood that there's like two different demographics of people: those who want to play the safe route, and those who want to really take the leap of faith and really, you know, play the risks and really have full faith in their potential.
Yeah, so I've always been like pretty frugal. Like I grew up frugal. I think I don't remember exactly how much I had saved up when I quit, but I want to say it was probably around like 50,000. But I was spending like, probably half that per year, like 25,000. Like that's what I was living off of in a relatively expensive state. So I didn't have like a ton of money, but I was just very, very frugal. So financially, it was just about saving up as much as I could. Mentally, I kind of just figured I could just get another job if I needed to. Like I could try out, business and entrepreneurship, and if it didn't work, well, I'll just get a job. And I think a lot of people like overthink that part. They're like, oh, well, what if it doesn't work out? Yeah, nobody really cares if you have like a little gap on your resume, or even just like put your company there and say that you worked for that company and then it went out of business. I mean, that's not even lying, it's just like that's what happened. So I think people overthink that part.
So I echo everything that people are saying here. You got to be cheap. You got to make sure you're stacking your runway, your investments. And it also helps to have projects you're working on the side to just prove something out. And having backup plans, such as knowing that you can go back to a job if needed. So make sure to keep your 9 to 5 connection strong. Please prepare if you can, not only financially, but mentally and emotionally, because it's going to be tough. How did you feel that first week after quitting?
I was really excited, thankfully. And I think that was really helpful for me too. I had a lot of things coincide where it really made quitting feel like it was the best decision for me in a lot of ways. I had a lot of opportunities pop up. I started a lot of different things and ventures, and things were doing really well, like from basically every vantage point. I was feeling really good. I was making a lot of money, and I feel very lucky that that was the case. And it was to the point where literally I was enjoying every day so much that I like literally I would just get up and work, and then eventually I'd go to the gym at some point, and then I would work more and I'd go to sleep more or less. And so I remember, especially like the first week, I would just kind of be annoyed when I had to go to sleep because I was really enjoying the stuff that I was working on. And for me, it was just like pure elation. I really was happy to be doing the stuff that I wanted to do, even if there was risk involved. I felt way more like I was living, as cheesy as that
Yeah.
sounds. So the first week was really great.
Same.
Dude, for the first year, for 6 months for sure, vividly I remember that. But even the first year, like nervous, anxious, excited, all the emotions you could possibly feel. When you take that plunge, especially the first like day. I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I just like it just everything raised. My heartbeat was raising. I was telling people around me, being like, I did it. Like, this is crazy. I did it. I did it. I was like, just you have that fire lit. Like, it's finally, the fire has been started, and it's up to you to really move against that.
So as you can see, a lot of our guests felt, very excited, very eager to get started on the future. And for me, I was a little bit different. I really didn't do much that first week. I was pretty relaxed. I kind of just took a break for a little bit, but pretty quickly I snapped back into it because I was like, I need to go now. Like, laziness is just going to burn money for me. Like, I got to get back on YouTube, got to keep my software skills sharp and that kind of thing. And I think not having that first paycheck come in right when you quit is really a wake-up call. What's been the biggest challenge for you since quitting?
I would say not like you do know where your next paycheck is coming, but you also don't at the exact same time. 1 month you could bring on 4 clients paying, 4 or 5 grand a month. The next you could lose 3 clients, 3 enterprise clients, and you lose 15 grand a month in monthly recurring revenue. That is a scary position to be in. Or one of your key hires, your key employees quits unannounced, or just XYZ fire to put out. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Like I said, even as you build your financial position, sometimes things will creep up at you out of nowhere, and you're like, where the hell did this come from? It happens from time to time, whether it's mostly financial, or it could be, a mental thing. It could all be in your head sometimes too, and you just have to go through. I always say this, it's like the only way out is through. You just have to keep pushing through the moment. Think that a lot of your competitors and a lot of people will just give up after 1 or 2 hardships, and it's like that should make you more motivated to keep going because everyone else gives up so quickly. So I don't know. I've always kind of led with that, and it's served me well, at least for right now. But sometimes I even still, to this day, in the financial position that I'm at, I still struggle with that stuff mentally, and you just got to move past it. You just got to push through as much as you can.
The biggest challenge for me is honestly having a balance between working and actually having like fun or relaxation, because even when I did have a job, me relaxing or playing a video game without recording, it always connects to me like I'm wasting time. I should be working. I should be working. For me, it's more of a mental, like I need more of a balance, because all I really do is edit, is work and brainstorm. Like, I stay up 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning every other night, practically every night, just thinking how I can make money, escalate my audience, and just really grow as a person and as a business owner. I sell games on the side. I manage my Discord team. I'm thinking about investing, and I just want to keep like excelling in those domains. Stress is very important in life, especially as like a man. You need to learn to really let stress fuel you. I really let stress amplify me. If I'm stressed, like, oh, I don't know if this video is going to do good, or if I need ideas, that's just going to make me work more. 9 times out of 10, when you're feeling stressed in something that you're wanting to do, I feel like it's just God putting you at the test to really like build your character and really develop yourself into what you're desired to be. Because
Hmm.
to really get to a certain level, you need to go through a lot of experiences, life experiences, and learn a lot. You need to fail a lot, you need to lose a lot, and you need to really feel that strain, and that's really going to build your core to the limit. I'm just so addicted to working. People tend to say, "Oh, like enjoy the present, enjoy life, take a little break." I understand that, but who's to say I'm not enjoying the work I'm putting in, right? Like, we're playing video games, we're talking about our lives, we're inspiring thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And to me, that's enjoyment within itself. So I don't really fear of failing, because I'm either going to succeed or die trying. But for me, there's no or. I'm gonna succeed regardless. Especially in your 20s, you really need to not be fearful of taking risks, because this is more or less the best era of your life and most quote unquote safest era of your life to take these risks. And I encourage everyone to really just try different things, and you never know where it could end you up.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me is when I was working my corporate job in the office, I would go into the office, I would program, and then I would come home, and I was just doing one very specific part of business, which was building the product. I was just programming. And the biggest challenge for me has been the other side, like the other half of business, basically, which is advertising, marketing, sales, like that type of stuff. I think business is like 50% like building something and 50% selling that thing. Even if you're doing freelance, it's like 50% finding the client and then 50% like actually doing work for the client. Yeah, I definitely need to get, better at, doing that stuff, but that's definitely been the hardest part for me. If you spend, 200 hours like building a product, like programming something, you should spend 200 hours marketing it. And when I think about that from the perspective of how much time I've spent coding Quick Elements and then how much time I've spent marketing it, I'm like, wow, I've spent thousands of hours on this. I definitely have not spent even close to thousands of hours trying to advertise it. That's like been definitely the biggest challenge for me, is putting myself into that completely different mindset of, sales, like being a salesperson, just because I've never done that before. The other challenge though is just, the inconsistent income, and honestly, like clients just not paying you on time or not paying you at all. You don't have to worry about that when you have a job like that just pays you every other week or whatever. But that's definitely like a big thing if you're doing a lot of freelance work.
So I think for me, my answer is very similar to Kobateen's. Just trying to relax is difficult for me because I always want to work. I always want to, do videos, do software, and I love what I do, and that's a blessing. But the problem is if I spend extended time away from work, I feel like I'm getting behind. Like if I don't grind, I'm not getting paid. Another challenge that Jake and BizPath mentioned is that finding work is kind of a challenge because not only do you need to do the work, but you have to find it. At your 9 to 5, your work is just given to you. And when you don't have that, it's your responsibility to go get it. And this can make income very unpredictable. And you need to have the fortitude to stick out the bad months and then save during the good months. Is there anything you miss about your old 9 to 5 job?
I think what I'm not going to miss is, like, I didn't like that someone would just tell me what to do more or less. Or even, it's just, even though I can decide certain things I'd want to work on or projects that I'd want to be involved with or whatever, there's still this like silo that you work in and you're largely confined to that silo. So I definitely don't miss that. I like that I can wake up every day and sort of pick and choose what I want to work on or what's the highest priority, whether that's the mentorship program, my newsletter, YouTube, whatever it is. I feel like there's all these shiny things that I like doing, and it's really nice to context switch between them instead of like always living in, I'm working on YouTube podcasts and the client side of iOS or whatever that I was working on. I think the thing that I will miss to some degree is just being around like really smart people day to day like that. I learned a lot from a lot of the different coworkers that I worked with. And I think in a lot of ways, they taught me a lot about, just how to be a good engineer. And I definitely appreciate that. And so it's been interesting now sort of doing this solo stuff on my own, trying to still be around people like day to day. And a lot of the people that I'm working with now or doing things with is virtual. So that's definitely different. I miss being with people in person. Yeah. And just to add to that quickly, I think I love that you message me because I think this is so fun. Like this is how you make friends and this is how you get to know other content creators. And there have been other people that I met through content that, are some of my best friends in the world now. And I really love hanging out with them. And that would have never happened if we didn't have that shared thing of content. And it's amazing. Like, it's amazing that we could do this, right? You can message me, we could hop on a call, we can make a video together. Mm-hmm. That's just super cool. I love that. That's the world we live in. It's super cool.
This is a tough one to answer. I would say, as silly as it sounds, the office environment and just being on a physical sales floor, and not to be like cheesy, but the boiler room, like Wolf of Wall Street kind of style. Those were some of the best memories I've ever had. Just hearing people live calls, hearing the objections from leads that we would all just laugh at and be like, dude, hang up the phone. Like, it's not that serious. Or a good one. And it was that like Wolf of Wall Street moment where it'd be like, how the hell did you do that? How the hell did you close that client like that? Or just like pranks that we'd pull. I do think there's something to be said about a comeback for sometimes like a hybrid or physical office jobs at one point or another. Like, it was a lot of fun. and just being able to like network and like talk to people like that and have clients come through. That's one thing I miss. So I know that sounds a little bit silly and sometimes the structure, but now like when you're in the beginning phases, structure is very important and you really do miss that when you quit the job. The best thing about a job is like you have, for the most part, strict hours you have to follow, which I hate, but I also love at the same time. And you need that in the beginning as an entrepreneur. Now, not so much. I don't have to worry about it too much, but it's very different from when you're on your own versus when you're working there.
Ultimately, I don't miss anything about a job, but there's just a few handful of people that I would like to talk to again, maybe, or just I don't know. I took everything I could take from a job, you know? I met all kinds of people. I've learned things, but ultimately, I don't really miss it because it's just not meant for me. Like I said, I felt like I was wasting time there. Like money for me, within the past couple months, my brain has been changing where money is not much of a worry for me because it's always gonna come. I'm always gonna spend it, and I just have full faith in my direction and path of life. So
Yeah, I would say I definitely don't miss like going into the office, like sitting in traffic for an hour after work. Like that part definitely sucked. Um, but I do miss like how chill it was. The fact that the company that I worked for was profitable. It was like a profitable bootstrapped startup. So it meant like I never had to really worry about being laid off as long as I did my job. I never had to worry about not being paid. Yeah, I just didn't really have to worry about a lot of things. Like it was chill. Like now, like there's definitely a lot more stress, a lot more like worry. Obviously, I make a lot more money now than I did when I was working that job, but that job was like just very chill. Yeah, I just felt comfortable there, like working during the day, and once I left work, I was done. Like I didn't think about, oh, how am I gonna, you know, do more work? Like there was no reason for me to think about going above and beyond at that company. One, because I didn't have any ownership of the company; it wasn't my company. So now, if I go like on the weekend, for example, and I want to go rock climbing or I want to go on a hike or something, a lot of times I'll be thinking about work, and I definitely miss just not having to think about work.
So for me, there is something to be said about the social aspect of going into the office. Usually companies have events that can be kind of fun. You can meet people. I've made a couple good friends at work, and I still am connected to many of the people I used to work with. So I definitely miss the in-office aspect, as many of them mention. So what do people misunderstand about quitting your job?
I think what people misunderstand is exactly that. I think most people probably think that everything is going to be fine or it's going to be easier for some reason than working a 9 to 5. And I don't view it as that. And I really enjoy working hard, but I want to choose what I work hard at. It's almost like choosing your hard, right? I think having a 9 to 5 is hard in different ways than working for yourself, but it's not hard, at least in my situation. It wasn't hard for the hours. It wasn't hard for the work that I was doing. It was hard mentally. It was hard to keep thinking that I'm going to wake up and keep doing this in perpetuity and be living in this box that I don't really want to be living in, honestly. And so I think people have a misconception about that like working for yourself will be easier, or that, you won't go through any struggles, because I think you will. I think the difference is that you're just choosing to do that. And I find a lot more meaning in choosing what I struggle with and choosing what I do day to day. And I am working way harder, but to me, it's way more fun and it's way more fulfilling than it is working for, a company 9 to 5. So I think that's a big misconception. People think it is sunshine and rainbows, and it really isn't. I think the difference is that you are getting to just figure it out on your own. And even though it is hard, at least it's like the hard that you get to choose every day.
I think the biggest thing that people misunderstand is like it's this guru, flashy, every possible option that you could just choose, and it's not that at all. Entrepreneurship is different for everyone for sure, and like I had a book of business or clients lined up before I quit. Obviously, I realized I'm extremely lucky, but I think the thing that most people understand is like, oh, I'm going to be working less, or I'm going to be making more and working the same. It's like, dude, in most cases, you're actually going to be working probably twice the amount, or at least 1.5 times more for maybe half the pay. Like that is a very real scenario, 6 months to the first year of business, of doing your own thing. That's just normal. But that's the freeing part about it, is like, I personally would rather make 50 grand working for myself than 100 or 150 grand working for someone else. That's just my opinion. Everyone else is different. Everyone else has different responsibilities, but everyone thinks it's like this easy ticket to freedom. Hell no. Like, it's honestly the quite opposite in the beginning. But if you sacrifice now for like 1 to 2 years, you can set yourself up for life, or you could coast throughout your job for the whole life, but work until you're freaking 65 or 70 and also not, increase your income as much as it may need to be. So just think about that. It's not for everyone. I think that's another thing too, is most people think that quitting your job should be the end goal. I don't think so. I think a lot of people shouldn't be entrepreneurs, and a lot of people would rather have that structure and the colleagues and, the office that they could fall back on. Like, that's normal. That's totally, totally fine. But for those who want it, it's there for the grabbings. And that's why I love, America. That's why I love, the life in general, is you could just go after it whenever you want, however you want. So,
Like I quit my job like multiple times, and I could say like what, 3 times, and two of those times I did not maximize my productivity. Like I was chilling, relaxing, and just sitting on money and really just letting it go down and down and down until I was forced to get another job. But now, if you're going to want to quit your job, you're really going to have to work extra hard above everyone around you on your side hustle. Like when I went into this job, my last job, I already had an audience. I was jobless when my video blew up in 2023. And unfortunately, I was forced to go get another job because I had no more money. So I worked for 9 months, I accumulated money, and at the same time, I was still working extra hard. I got around 8,000 subscribers in less than a year in that time frame, and I was so confident enough to just quit that job. But if you're really gonna want to pursue entrepreneurship, um, being a self-owned businessman and just really going down this path, you have to understand that you're gonna have to work extra hard compared to all the 9 to 5ers and all the safe betters out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the biggest misunderstandings is that everyone has their own idea of entrepreneurship, and there are different tiers of entrepreneurship, just like there are different tiers of jobs. And you might have one job that's, you have to go into the office every day and, you don't like your boss and whatever, like all the negative aspects of a job. And you might have another job that is fully remote and you love your boss and there's no useless meetings, there's no daily stand-ups, like, a really good job. And entrepreneurship is the same thing, where there are some companies where everything is falling apart constantly, and all your freelance clients, like, they keep changing their scope of what they want from you. And there are other entrepreneurship things where just from a traditional perspective, maybe, you have a factory in, China or something, that they produce a product for you and just ship it directly to your customers. And then you have one employee who handles marketing, and you just kind of like let the processes that you made kind of play out and collect the profit. And there are probably millions of people who have businesses like that, where they just kind of have some employees who run the business, and they own the business though, so they collect the profit. Um, and I think that, yeah, there's like that tier where it's like, very little work, and then there's also the other tier where it's like freelance. And I think freelance is honestly probably closer to a job than it is to that, in the sense that you're still trading your time for money. Um, and you're charging for your time. And obviously you can hire people and you can turn your freelance into an agency. And I think that that's like a good step for a lot of people. Um, but I think, yeah, the big misunderstanding is that um, entrepreneurship is going to give you this, like, um, just like you're not going to have to work, or you're going to be able to build a business that, kind of just like you just get to collect the profit. Whereas like you have to build it into that. You have to work really hard to build that leverage or build those processes. And leverage can come in many different ways. You can use money to buy paid advertising to advertise your freelance work. That's something that I experimented with, which it didn't end up working, but it's like you could hire people as well, hire employees to do the work for you. So imagine, you get the contract, but then now you're paying somebody, potentially someone in Eastern Europe to actually do the programming. Then that's more like like a business than, freelance is.
I echo everything people have said. It's not glamorous. Like, it's pretty cool to not have a schedule and to work wherever and whenever you want. But the reality so far for me is that I'm doing more work for far less money. Now, will that continue? Hopefully not. But early in the journey, it's not going to be easy. So you have to keep that in mind. How have your mental health and relationships changed since quitting your job?
Mental health is right now never been better, and the relationships, actually, as weird as this sounds, are much more deeper and fulfilling given the experience that I now have. And the circle around me, I can talk about the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, answer real-time questions on it. And I'm not like freaking at lunch with my mom saying, so you want to start a business, like this is how to do. I'm not talking about that, but I just mean, like, generally speaking, it's made me a sharper person. It's made me more interesting. It's made like the flexibility to just be able to pay random bills off, or help people out, and that is a really fulfilling thing, which helps my own personal mental health. So I think it's gotten better. In the beginning, though, this is something that's a little controversial. I do think you have to isolate yourself. It is a very lonely journey in entrepreneurship in general, but when you really want to go all in, dude, it's just you. It's literally just you on those nights, on the weekends, at random times of the day, working on your own stuff, and it does get very lonely. So you have to isolate yourself to get ahead. But once you're there, man, I've never felt better for mental health and relationships wise. It's great.
I would say my mental health is significantly better. I'm just a lot happier having more freedom. And I think that a lot of that comes from just working remotely. So, regardless of if I was like working remotely, freelance, or a traditional job that was like fully remote, I think just being able to like not have to ask permission to, take a Wednesday morning off, on a whim, or just like not having to like feel like I'm obligated to do something at a certain time, is just like, yeah, like a lot nicer. Yeah, and also just being able to like go on a vacation, because I feel like it, or go travel. Yeah, that's really nice. Definitely is tough, and especially when I have like actually a big client, like the one that recently just ended. A lot of times it is putting a lot of pressure on your partner as well. A lot of times I would be working late, and my wife would, come home from her job, and then, make dinner, and then, I would feel kind of like, bad that, I was putting a lot of pressure on her, but, then again, I was making us a lot of money. So,
Yeah.
it's hard to balance those things for sure. But, especially, if you don't have, a partner that's like, has a consistent income as well, I'm sure that financially that could put a strain on the relationship too. So it's definitely a lot to think about, just like, planning and making sure that you're on the same page, with your partner.
So for me, my mental health has definitely been better because I'm more fulfilled and my relationships are strong too. But definitely adds the extra challenge of not being able to turn the work off in your head. So you just got to communicate with your partner, with your friends, when you need to work, when you don't need to, and that should solve that. What's your advice for someone watching this who wants to quit their job?
My advice would be that if you're in your late teens or early 20s, and this is not to say to go in tomorrow and give your notice, I think the first thing you have to do is make a plan. You should go into it eyes wide open, and you should understand what you're getting into. And I would recommend you try to build the thing or work for yourself on the side first. And if it's a thing that you can do while you have your 9 to 5, I think that's the safest thing to do, but it might be a slower path to getting to where you want to be, but that also has benefits. I would say that if you're in your late teens or your early 20s, at least acknowledge that you probably have the most freedom and the least responsibility that you probably will have. I think as time goes on, I just turned 30, and I just feel like I have more to lose nowadays than I would if I was, say, 20 years old, going out and doing something on my own. So I think understand that you probably, if you fall into that bucket, at least you have a lot of capacity to take on outsized risk. And I think that's pretty valuable. And if you could learn how to use calculated risk to your advantage, that's really, really valuable. And you could use that throughout life, like as you go on. So I guess that's probably what I would say is I think if you want to quit your job, you have to make a plan first. And you have to understand the pros and cons of doing it. Obviously, I almost feel like this hopefully is not that deep of insight. Like I feel like this should probably be par for the course. You need to have a plan, and you need to understand, especially financially, what that life looks like if you do quit your job, how much runway you do have, if that runway is enough for you to have your plane take off, that is you working for yourself. But you should go in eyes wide open. You should not be gambling with your livelihood. You should know if you hit a certain amount in your bank account or something, or if you can reduce your costs to some number, then you're cleared to quit your job. You should absolutely have a plan and follow that plan.
Ask yourself, do you have a skill set? Do a self-assessment. Do you have a skill set to fall back on? And more importantly, one that you could sell into the marketplace as soon as possible. If so, perfect. That's what I would call like step one. That's out of the way. Step two, just the emergency fund alone. Do you have at least, and I'm capitalizing this, like 3 months minimum, no questions asked, ideally even like 6 to 12 months of living expenses? If that's a yes, then both of those, you're in a very, very good spot. I would consider quitting at that point, because you can't go wrong with your financial position, plus you have something that you can actually do. Everyone wants to quit, but they have nothing that is of, this sounds rude, but nothing of value to offer to other businesses, to solopreneurs, to people that who would want to buy their product or service. They don't have any plan on that, right? So a bonus step would be to freelance or find some type of business on the side that you could spool up to match your 9 to 5 income. So let's just say, worst case scenario, you're making $5,000 a month right now, $60,000 a year at your job. Awesome. And you're working 40 hours per week. When you spool up something on the side, you're going to be working a lot. But if you're able to make $5,000 a month on your own, call it working 20 hours per week, I'm just using that as an average, then it makes so much numerical sense. It is like actually irresponsible for you not to look at the law of numbers and be like, wait a second, if I'm making $5,000 a month for my job and I'm working full time there, but I'm making $5,000 a month working 20 hours a week, I could hypothetically, as a worst case, make 8 to 10 grand a month working for myself, plus have the freedom, plus have the X, Y, and Z. So that is where I would say that 3-step like process is 100% the best like checklist to look at. If you don't have at least one of those, it is not the right time, brother. I promise you, do not quit just yet. But if you have at least a couple, ideally all three, I think it would be irresponsible for you not to quit. I think you're just waiting for the perfect time, which is just like the stock market. I'll use the cheesy quote, like time in the market versus timing the market. You need to just pull the trigger, get off the job, go find something that you can do. You're going to never regret it, in my opinion.
I would advise doing the bare minimum at your 9 to 5 job just to get you by, while focusing on a side hustle. You might not know exactly what you want to do, but it's all about exploring. Try to invest. Maybe, I don't know, if you're creative, make music, make YouTube videos, make TikTok reels, build a skill, provide a service. Look at your 9 to 5 job as a way to just stabilize your income for the meantime. Like I was at my job looking at my YouTube analytics, replying to comments, planning future live streams, planning YouTube posts. I was working on my YouTube at my job, you know? And that's just my opinion. I do believe you have to really put your bare minimum just to really preserve your energy, because energy is so valuable. Your strength is so valuable in this life. You really have to manage your energy and your efforts wisely. But I highly advise you study anything and everything, but especially at like a minimum wage job. You're going to be easily replaced and forgotten in a couple months. So might as well just take it to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I could give like some cliche advice, like, make sure you have enough savings. And while I do think that that's important, make sure that you have, a good amount of savings before you quit. Um, I think it's really important to make sure that you know what it is that you actually want. Do you want money? And if you do, why do you want that money? Is it for the freedom that it could provide you? Is it because, you want to buy flashy cars? Like actually genuinely think about, what it is. And yeah, I mean, think about your options. Would you be better off just, grinding your way to a high paying job, working that for 5 to 10 years, than trying to, go freelance? Like, would you be happier? Would it be better? Would you rather work, 20 years, freelance, or, 10 years at a high paying job? Like, think about the actual options. Ultimately, if you're doing it for the freedom, there's nothing that's going to beat, you know, quitting and trying to make your own business. You're not going to get that type of freedom at any type of job, even if it is like working remotely. So, I would say just make sure that you know what it is that you want and make sure that you constantly have that in mind and that when you're building a business, you know, build it with like leverage in mind. If that's what you want, if you want the freedom, don't build a business that's going to, like let's say for example, a marketing agency where any of your clients can call you at any time, and you have to kind of give them customer support. Maybe that's not the right goal if what you're looking for is freedom. Maybe you want a software as a service product, or maybe you want freelance, or if your thing is that you want to just make a ton of money as quickly as possible, maybe don't open a restaurant, So like actually think about what it is that you want and why you want, and whether it's money or freedom or something else, and think about the, like the type of business that you're going to start and if it'll actually give you what it is that you want.
So I believe everyone's answers completely echo what I say. I don't have much to add here. Just begin working on something on the side. Be frugal, invest smart, use your 9 to 5 to learn, and then when the moment is right, don't be afraid to take the leap. Do you have any regrets? Would you still quit if you could go back?
So thankfully, I don't think I have really large regrets, at least at this point in time. And again, if we talk in 3 months, I'm sure it might change. And I think there's going to be lots of ups and downs. I think in some ways, I almost regret the idea of not doing it sooner. And something I would caution people against is like people always think about the downsides of like, what if you don't take the risk, or rather, what happens if you take the risk and you fail? And I don't think enough people think about the risk that you're actually incurring by just deciding to continue doing what you're doing. And there's this really interesting exercise called fear setting. I can't remember off the top of my head who it's by, but there's this concept of fear setting, and there's a really good talk on like a TED talk by the person on it. And it basically has you evaluate like what happens if you don't do the thing that you want to do. And exploring that was really helpful for me. I think so I really regret like not doing it sooner and opening my eyes to being this happy. And I said this in my video too, where it's weird that it took me 8 years of working full time as a software engineer to then validate that I actually do want to do this thing on my own and work for myself, right? It's been about 30 days and I already know, I think this is the path that I want to follow. So I almost regret the time that I lost. But at the same time, I think a lot of that has given me the confidence and the skills and the runway to now try this on my own. So I regret it in some ways, not doing it earlier, but I also acknowledge that it gave me a lot of the cushion and stuff that I have, and I'm lucky enough to be able to use right now. I definitely do not regret quitting. I feel really thankful that I'm able to take this opportunity to try something on my own and to see if it works. And I know that at the end of the day, I would regret never trying. I won't regret failing. So even if I have to go back and find a 9 to 5 job, I'll always be happy to at least I tried to do this thing on my own, even though it didn't work out. So I don't regret failing at all. Don't regret failing. I don't regret quitting at all. And, even if it fails, I think it'll work out and it'll be fine.
This is no regrets, but it's more of a mental thing. And it is not so much anymore, but especially the first year or two, the status of having no title or the even perception of what people think, that was a really big challenge for me. Like what my title said on LinkedIn, how I had technically no job. I was unemployed at that point. Nobody knew I was freelancing. And I know that sounds so cheesy. It's such a first world problem, but it was true. Now, not so much, because who really gives a damn? Like nobody needs to know my financial position. Nobody cares. But in the beginning, it was just like such a mind screw that it's like, I don't have a title. I'm not in sales anymore, quote unquote. I'm on my own. So it's like entrepreneurship is kind of gagged and kind of been like, oh, you're quitting your job. How's that little side business going? Versus some guy who's working for the big five, bank or, finance, tech, whatever. It's like, dude, you have no idea. And I have way more freedom. I don't have to wear a suit. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but it was just like, that was a real mind screw for me, because I went 4 years with having that fancy title, having that fancy looking LinkedIn profile to nothing. And it was really weird to give up in the beginning. And of course I had some judgment, but it's all good. It all worked out. And I guess the regrets about quitting, absolutely zero. It is quite literally been one of the top 3 decisions, and honest to God, actually, maybe the top decision I've ever made in my life. It changed everything. It gave me the freedom that I have right now, being able to just record this. Like if I didn't quit my job, it's 11:20 in the morning Eastern as we're recording this, I don't think I'd be making videos right now. I wouldn't have the creative energy or it's just a Wednesday. Exactly. When we're recording this, for those listening, it's a Wednesday morning. And it's just like, I couldn't do this when I, was working a 9 to 5. Maybe I could with some flexibility, but for the most part, dude, you don't have the freedom that you do when you're just on your own. You're self-sufficient. You're able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. That is like by far the number one thing that I, will never give up again. I'll never go back to the corporate world. It's been, like I said earlier, the best ticket to freedom I could have ever asked for. And I actually worry that if I didn't quit, I wouldn't have had made as much strides as I did. Well, I know that for a fact, but I think people can sometimes wait too long. Before they know it, they're mid to late 20s or in their 30s with way more responsibilities, kind of just spinning their wheels, hoping for that right moment, hoping for that right time. I really do genuinely wish I quit sooner. I wouldn't change a thing because I wouldn't have known the client situation that I was in and that I could have worked, doing my same thing on a freelance basis. But still, it's like now I'm seeing 18, 19, 20-year-olds just go all in and they start making insane amounts of money and they start building an audience way, way sooner. And it's like, dude, this is just the name and, age of the internet. Like this is happening right before our eyes. And there's no perfect time. You just have to know when to just push the button. You just have to do it. And that's what most people struggle with is they have everything set up properly, but they never just put their hand on the trigger. They kind of just sit there in limbo. And I'm telling you, for those who want it, like go out and get it. It's right in front of you. All you got to do is get your stride and get your piece of the pie, if you will.
Not really. I don't really have any regrets. I didn't really give a 2-week notice because these jobs, especially this last one, I feel like corporations tend to really not care too much about their employees. You could be, because for me, I was a grocery clerk, so I'm already a really good worker. So in that domain, I really did amazing. Like I was like the best employee, but you don't really get any rewards nor praise. I don't really regret anything I did, nor would I change anything because I really do my best to strategically plan and calculate every single move, even though it might not seem too nice or a bit rude, like not giving a
Mhm.
2-week notice. I don't know if I would quit earlier, but I believe the time I quit was like pretty much perfect. I don't know. Yeah, I quit my job and then that weekend I live streamed the Xbox 360 marketplace shutdown. And that was I literally made history in a live stream and it was one of my biggest streams ever. And the income from that was incredible. And I feel like that was just like a thumbs up from like God telling me you did the right choice and you really have to fully believe in yourself and work hard to this path to this goal that you really desire to achieve. I feel like the timing was too coincidental to be a coincidence, honestly. But I would definitely still quit.
Yeah, I would definitely quit that job, just because of the money I was making. It was good money, but I have a friend who works at Amazon. He's a software engineer. He works on the AWS team, making 350K a year, and
Not
I wasn't
bad.
making anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't making anywhere near that. So, but I mean, I was making good money, but it wasn't anywhere near that. Sometimes I think about, what's my goal with running a business, and I think ultimately the goal is freedom, and how I want to achieve that freedom is by, making money, right, and investing it so that way I don't have to work.
Mhm.
And I think about, if I could go back and make 350K a year. Not saying that I would even be able to land that job, you know, but if I was to do that, I would be well well further on my way to financial independence than I am now. Would it have, like, sometimes I think about, would it have been a better idea to just kind of try to maximize my income at a traditional job and then just try to retire early rather than trying to, make my own business to maximize my income?
Mhm.
And I definitely think that this way is more fun and more fulfilling. But I think the other way might have been more profitable. But you never know, right? Because I didn't do
Yeah.
it, and I'm definitely happy with my choice. But sometimes I still think about that.
For me, honestly, I don't regret anything. I think I left at the right time. The only thing I might have regret doing is not starting my side projects during my 9 to 5 sooner, because who knows where I'd be if I started my YouTube 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So start on that thing as soon as you can. That's all I have to say about that. Anyways, that's going to wrap this one up. This is the longest video in YLearn history. So thank you so much to those of you who are still watching. And I'd like to thank all the guests who did an interview with me today. Much appreciated to all of you. And definitely leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I hope these stories helped. And let's take action on our dreams this week. Adios. We'll catch you in the next one.